So let's talk a little bit about monitoring .NET applications using System Center 2007 Operations Manager and using AVIcode 5.7. Already I've just quickly run the MSI file, which does the installation of all the necessary components into the Operations Manager environment. Basically walked through a wizard and answered 3 questions, and what I get now is the ability to discover the .NET applications and create templates that understand what I want to be alerted against. So what I'll do is pick a web application, create a monitoring template. So in doing so, what it will actually accomplish is pushing out the correct configurations out into the systems that host this application, as well as create alerts based on information that it's collecting. So you can see here I get a listing of all the .NET applications that are in my environment, and in particular I can see that I have a Dinner Now application, which is the one that in this particular example I'll be concerned about, and I can list out the computers it's deployed to. So just clicking on the application name that I want, selecting the management pack that I'd like to deploy it to. I'm going to go ahead and use an existing management pack that I have already earlier created. This is simply just an empty container for storing the overrides and configurations. Quickly, I'll answer a few questions about what I care about, what I want to alert against. Ideally, what I'm looking at is when do we collect data to use for diagnostics purposes, and when do we actually alert against either that data or that type of monitoring. So what I'll do is I'll say add a single second every time an entry point takes longer than that to go ahead and collect an event inside AVIcode. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and tell it to create an alert against that event, as well as certain types of security and connectivity failures. These are exceptions in the code that we're predetermining fall into these buckets, meaning that if you can't connect to a SQL server, that's a connectivity failure. If you can't do an insert command because your permissions don't exist, that's a security failure. We also have these secondary monitors that we can create, and these are additional capabilities to alert against the overall health of the application. For example, I'm looking at creating an alert when a single transaction takes a second, but what I might want to do is put the application into a warning state when the average response time takes half a second. So we'll go ahead and set that. So it'll go to yellow and it'll show me that it's somewhat unhealthy based on the fact that the average response time, every single request across all servers, all systems that this application's hosted. So it's application specific. What we'll also do now is look at what kind of transactions do I care about. We're already going to automatically monitor certain transactions, certain pieces of the applications based on entry points. So for example, you do a login. We'll monitor that. We'll monitor that across any of the systems that we're hooked into. But I might want to set different alerting levels for those, different awareness settings. For example, I could say, let's look at, and what I'm going to do is browse out to that application server, since I don't know all the different pages that exist. I'm going to say search page is something that I'm interested in being aware of. I've got my average execution time for that set a little high. Let's go ahead and change that. I'm going to lower that back down to the same. Actually, for this, I'm going to go ahead and let that go into an error state when that search page takes that long. And again, that's the averages. And I can look at exceptions that are taking place. Are there an increase in exceptions that are happening? And in this particular example, I can now even be more specific about failures. So even handled exceptions or other types of failures in the code can bubble up and now create an alert. So we'll go ahead and leave that particular one. I'm going to go ahead and add another one because there's not always just one transaction, one component, or one thing that I might care about. So again, we'll reach back out. In this particular case, let's look at the cart page. I know that that's the purchasing process. I'm going to go ahead and set the same levels there. I'm going to let this take a little bit longer. I'm using some third-party components. It's okay to actually be a performance problem at a little bit higher level than some of the other things that I'm concerned with. And that's all it really takes to set up the monitoring. Quick confirmation summary of what I'd like to set up, and what it's going to do is save this template so that I have the ability to go back and modify it as I need to. And then it's going to take an interval or a discovery interval to go out and actually hook into the applications that I care about once those applications restart. And then after that point, I'm going to start collecting data, performance on the application and application failures, and then I'm going to be able to actually trigger alerts and understand what's going on with the health state of my application. Now in this particular example, I'm looking at the health of the server-side component of the web UI. I can create for the web service in particular that I might care about, or in some examples I might even care about the user experience or what's actually taking place in the browser. Those can be different levels of awareness that I care about. For the purposes of this example, these are already created, so I'll actually just walk through.